Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're very pleased to have with us Ruth Fullam, and Ruth is the European Director for Enroll-HD. And unsurprisingly, that's what Ruth's going to talk to us about today. So we've got up to an hour or so, probably a little bit shorter. And so Ruth's going to tell you what Enroll-HD is, what the benefits of it are, and about how you can get involved. So am I okay just to hand over to you, Ruth?
Yep. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah. So yes, I'm going to speak to you today about getting involved in research, Enroll-HD collaboration with the Huntington's disease community. And I'm going to start off talking about what Enroll-HD is. I'm kind of going to talk about it from a fairly top level. Some of you will already know what Enroll-HD is, either from hearing previous talks or perhaps you take part in Enroll. But I'm really focusing on what our aims are and what we do with the data that we collect. So Enroll was established with three major aims: to support clinical trials, to enhance understanding of HD, and to improve clinical care. It's the current protocol is made up of kind of three different groups of things. So core assessments, and these are things which we ask participants to do at every single visit, so we get that data over time and we can see what changes over time. And these core assessments are things like demographic details, medication, medical history, comorbidities, so what other kind of diseases or conditions that people may have. We look at how people are moving, and we ask questions about behavior and mood. We do some pen and paper cognitive tests of thinking. We ask about function in day-to-day life, like how you go about just doing your day-to-day activities. And we collect a single blood sample kind of just once for these core assessments, which we use to look at the CAG gene expansion. There are also extended assessments, which are things that the site and the participant can choose to do. And these are self-report questionnaires on quality of life, behavior, health economics, some other cognitive tests. And finally, there are optional components. So these are things that the participant can explicitly kind of say, I do or I don't want to take part in this. I don't want to do it. So this is things like collection of family history information or donation of additional blood samples so that we can use them for research purposes. And the kind of average of the current Enroll visits is about 2 hours long. So what does that mean in reality? What does that mean for people who actually come and take part in a study visit? So we ask participants to come in annually. So once a year, come and see us, come and see one of our study sites. And when a participant comes to a study site, they'll get shown into a waiting room and someone will let the study staff know that you're ready and waiting. You'll often go and see multiple different people within the site. So you might see a neurologist, and you might see a research assistant or a research nurse. And those different people will ask different things. And they'll ask you to do some tasks, which some of them are dead easy, really straightforward, and some of them might be a little bit harder. There is usually a little bit of sitting around. The study site staff will be trying to kind of organize things and make things as smooth as possible, but there's usually a little bit of sitting around while they get organized. And participants can ask questions at any time, and the site staff will answer them for sure. And every single person is going to be really happy to have people there to take part in this research, because it is really valuable. So what do we do with all this information that we collect? So if you think about it, we've got all these participants coming in and they're providing us information and biological samples. We've got a lot of participants. So that's, a lot of information that we've got stored. So what do we do with it? So there are two kind of main things, I guess, that you could say are at the core of Enroll. And this is access to a large study data set for researchers and access to a really big biorepository. So all of the kind of products that we get out of any blood samples that people choose to give to us. So researchers can apply to use the data and they can apply to use the samples that we collect. And the reason why we do that is because actually doing research in HD or any rare disease is pretty tricky. If you are a site, say in, Southampton, then, you might only have access to those people who come to your clinic. And you might be interested in even a particular subset of those people who have particular symptoms, which means that actually the numbers of people that you'll have available for your research is relatively few. And when you're doing research, often you need actually quite large numbers of people in order to sufficiently power your analysis to do the research properly, in effect. So Enroll gets over that. We collaborate with sites across the world, and I'll later on present on the kind of numbers that we have, but thousands of people and all of that data and all of those samples ready for researchers to access, so they don't have to go through a really long period of trying to locate sufficient numbers of participants, maybe even contracting with other research institutions so that they'll also collect information on their behalf. They don't have to, find the funding for that, all that sort of thing. They can literally just apply to Enroll. And that means that that research that they want to do gets put out faster. So it accelerates the pace of our understanding of HD and kind of just moves the research on. That's at the core of what we do. We also use Enroll to implement additional studies. So a really good example of this at the moment is HD Clarity. So again, it can take a really long time if you've got you might have this great research idea, you might have this thing that you want to explore, and it can be hard to get set up. So, if you want to do a large scale study, then you have to think about how you're going to do the contracting, how you apply to the various ethical and maybe regulatory bodies. You have to work out, which sites you're going to work with, how you're going to do it, how you're going to collect the data. So all of that delays the onset of, delays the implementation of studies. It just slows everything up. With HD Clarity, which is a study that the Enroll platform is supporting at the moment, that started off as quite a like a single site study in UCL, looking at biomarkers in cerebrospinal fluid. And through the support of Enroll, we've provided an electronic data capture system. We help them with contracting with other institutions to take part, applications, and monitoring of their data. It's now grown so that is a multinational study now, and providing just really, really valuable data. So again, it's accelerated our understanding and the research in HD. We also use Enroll to support clinical trials. So we're in contact with sponsors of clinical trials, and in discussion with them we can recommend which sites we think are performing really well. We can tell them what sort of facilities they have as well, because the sites have already told us. So if a study needs -80 freezer or something like that, we can tell which sites have a -80 freezer. And then the sites themselves, once they sign up with this clinical trial sponsor to take on the trial, they can use the Enroll data to identify which participants fit the inclusion criteria for the study. And again, that just makes recruitment faster. It just moves things forward. And finally, Enroll informs future protocol design. So we've got all this data. You can see which measures are sensitive and of use basically for whatever symptom it is within HD. And so that helps guide other sponsors who are setting up studies to decide what to include in their protocol. Okay, so that's how we use the information and the data we collect and enroll. So what are the benefits to participants? Well, participating in Enroll does create an opportunity to take part in research when trials they're not always available due to age or disease progression, genetic status, or geography. Not all trials basically take part everywhere. But with Enroll, you can participate in research, and you can kind of feel like you're doing something, you're chipping away at things. It does improve the chances of taking part in future clinical trials if that is something that you're interested in doing. So, as I said, not all sites take part in clinical trials, but in the last few years, I think it's something like 90% of sites who have taken part in clinical trials are actually Enroll trials as well, Enroll sites as well. So, it increases your chances of being invited to take part if that was something you're interested in. It provides a way to try out if taking part in clinical research is something that you want to do. And you can kind of treat it as like a kind of tester session for participating in clinical trials, where clinical trials will require you to come to a site fairly often within a given period. Enroll only requires you to come once a year and provide that information. And finally, taking part in Enroll does bring benefit to the global HD community. It's used to accelerate research. It's used to improve understanding of the disease, and ultimately, the drive is to help facilitate the development of effective therapeutics. Okay, so I'm going to speak about where we are with Enroll moving forward. So we have been extraordinarily successful, and we're extremely grateful to everyone who's taken time out to take part in the study. So over the 11, maybe a little bit longer, 11 years that the study's been running at this current time, there have been over 31,000 participants ever enrolled, of which just over 21,000 are current participants. So these are people who have not withdrawn from the study. And just over 16,000 are active participants. So those are people who have been back for a study visit in the last 2 years. We have conducted over 111,000 visits and have collected over 77 million data points. We're active in 155 clinical sites over 23 nations, and we're really like pleased and proud to have supported over 33 studies and trials. And the Enroll data itself, it gets used, and at the moment, there are over 146 published articles using the Enroll data. So you can see it's making a significant contribution in the research community, and again, driving research forward and the understanding of HD. And we've accomplished a lot, but you know, like things don't stand still. The pace and direction of research is changing, and necessarily and thankfully so, because we want things to move on. So if we're looking at kind of therapeutics and where they're going, you know, this is, I think, certainly over the last 10 years, like you've seen research into therapeutics kind of hotting up for HD, which is fantastic news. And I would say that there are kind of like two different streams of therapeutics kind of being trialed at the moment. Therapeutics that look to treat symptoms of the disease, so things like chorea, or, you know, looking at cognitive symptoms, like memory, concentration, that sort of thing. And then there are other therapeutics that are being developed, and these are more disease modifying therapies. And the kind of ideal endpoint of, well, the ideal kind of outcome would be to have a therapeutic which is designed, you know, to slow the onset of the disease to the point where somebody with the CAG expansion does not see symptoms until they're a ripe old age, and, you know, like it basically it doesn't impact their lives, so it's like quietening down the HD. So that is one path of therapeutics, this idea that we could possibly like slow down the onset of the disease. So focusing on that, what do these types of drug trial need to succeed? So first of all, they need outcome measures. So all drugs that are developed and trialed need to be able to demonstrate, obviously, that they're actually doing what they want to do, that what they say that they're doing. But if a drug to slow the onset of the symptoms is really successful, it'll mean that we have people who never go on to develop symptoms. And I would say that the vast majority of our measures at the moment, they measure symptoms. So what do we need for you know, a trial to show that it is actually being successful, that it's actually making a difference to people with HD? We need measures that are sensitive to preclinical changes, so changes that might occur, you know, in a time period before people start showing clinical symptoms. And we need to identify really good biomarkers of disease progression. So when I'm talking about biomarkers, I'm referring to things that you can kind of sample from the body, so things like proteins, for example, that might change in relation to the disease as the disease progresses. So, you know, put really simply, for example, if you had a protein that just increased over time as Huntington's got worse, then that would be a really nice example of a biomarker. So if you had a drug that worked, then you could also show that you know, compared to people who are not on the drug, that protein is dropping off. Okay, so we need outcome measures, and we need a study population. So drugs that are designed to slow the onset of the disease need to show an effect in those people with no or very few clinical symptoms. But those people aren't always in contact with HD clinics because, you know, then they're not sick, they're not showing any symptoms, they don't need medical management and help at this current time. So how can a trial recruit this population when they're really working through hospitals and clinics that are otherwise drawing on their clinical population, the people who come to them for management? If we have a large population of people with no or very few clinical symptoms already identified, this is really going to help those clinical trials recruit to their studies and help, again, facilitate that research. At the moment, in our current Enroll-HD cohort, the age groups ranging from 36 to 55, so the older subset of participant, that's a considerably greater group of people than those who are younger, who are aged 18 to 35. What we want to see is an increase in this younger age group, as they're more likely to have no or very few clinical symptoms. And this is something that we think is important to allow us to support and facilitate clinical trials and the development of therapeutics, and just, again, help us develop and identify those outcome measures which are sensitive preclinically, and those biomarkers which are going to be of use in clinical trials. We do have a new protocol in development, and the one of the aspects of this protocol is that there will be a greater focus on the recruitment of people with no or very few clinical symptoms. There's also going to be an increased focus on the identification of biomarkers and an increased focus on outcome measures that are sensitive to preclinical changes. So this protocol is in development. It's kind of getting refined at the moment, and it's kind of a big job, because Enroll is very large, and obviously we want to make sure that when we're bringing out a new protocol, a new version of the study, that it's doing what we want it to. So it's currently in development. Okay, so within Enroll, how do we go about recruiting people with no or very few clinical symptoms? So we want to encourage these younger participants to take part in the study. Even now, even without the new protocol being brought in, research is, as I say, it's always moving forward. There are trials out there, very interested in this particular kind of group of people, and taking part in Enroll is a way to facilitate them and the research that kind of helps support clinical trials. We basically can't do it without the HD community. Nothing is possible. You're absolutely the key to our success. So this is a bit of an appeal to those HD families out there, because we need your help. We want your participation in the study. How can we do this? Okay, so we would like to spread word of Enroll-HD to and through families. So, if you think there are people out there that who might be interested in participating, to kind of tell them a little bit about Enroll, maybe show them this presentation. We would like to communicate the benefits of participation in the study. Like we ask for people's time and their energy when they come to these visits, and we don't take it lightly, but we do feel that it's worthwhile, because it is one of the major things that driving HD research. I think in the future there's going to need to be increased connection to the HDA to our study sites, to refer people who want to take part. And I think the HDA are already, in a number of cases, they are in contact with with study sites, and they do a great job. I think we're just going to have to, I think there'll be a necessity to foster those relationships. And we want to improve the communication between genetics department and the clinical study team. Genetics departments often see people who basically just never who aren't in contact with the clinical team because, as I said, people with no symptoms, they don't need to go and seek medical management, so they wouldn't be in contact with the clinical team. So if we can get that sort of communication through genetics departments, that would be that'll be the ideal thing. And just to pass on the information so that interested people can kind of get in contact with our study teams. Anybody who is interested in taking part in Enroll can also use the website to find the site which is nearest them. So this is our website up here, enroll-hd.org. And from there, you can have a search for the site which is nearest you. So by browsing the map, you can look by region. You can do an advanced search, which you can be like really specific on, like look for the nearest city, etc. And from there, what it brings up is the contact details for every single site. So usually the principal investigator, the doctor who is heading up that site, and then the study coordinator, the person who's doing a lot of the organization and the legwork for the study. And it should provide their email address and their telephone number, so you can contact the site directly and ask them to discuss the study with you and see if you want to take part. They can pass on the information about the study, and you can take your time to consider it. There are challenges to recruitment for this particular group of people, for those who are younger, 18 to 35. And we would like to take the time now to address some fears and barriers, which we hope will encourage more younger participants to take part. So what about if you are someone who has not yet made the decision to have your genetic test done, or maybe you have decided that you absolutely don't want to have that test done? We do take a blood sample, and we do have a look at that CAG length, but nobody at site, including the study doctor, should ever find out your genetic test result that we collect for the research. So it's kind of like a one-way street. So the blood sample gets taken off and we process it, and that that result is stored somewhere, but it never gets fed back to the site. And actually, there are very limited people who have access to that. It might be intimidating just knowing that that information is out there. If you haven't made the choice to get the genetic test done, just knowing that someone somewhere knows what the result is could be intimidating. But like I say, it does not get fed back to the site. It's really, really well protected. And we have to do this determination, because it helps contextualize all of the other information which we collect from our participants, and helps it all make sense. It's like the central jigsaw piece in the puzzle. So if you are asymptomatic, or someone who does not have clinical symptoms, you might be worried that you will find out that you're symptomatic if you come to a study visit. Now, the majority of assessments that are used in Enroll are, they're not designed to be used clinically, and so they are really research assessments, and they're not even research assessments to be used looking at one single person. Generally, we have a look at very large data sets. So we're looking at like, you know, tens, hundreds, thousands of people all together to look for patterns. They're not really used in that way. And actually, you know, when people come to sites, if they're, you know, hyper aware that they're, you know, making mistakes and things are going wrong, again, like, people just shouldn't worry about this, because, you know, I've worked in HD clinics myself, and I know that people just like make mistakes all the time because they're a little bit nervous, or they're tired, or they're hungry, they just need to eat some lunch. You know, people make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes, and you shouldn't kind of get worried that too much is going to be read into that. Also, I think it's really key that participants can feel that they're able to talk to the site ahead of kind of providing any information for the study. So they should be able to talk to staff and set kind of boundaries and their expectations. You might not want to know, even if that clinician maybe thinks that they can see something, maybe you don't want to know, in which case you can tell the clinician that you do not want to get any feedback. On the other side of it, if, you know, like, if maybe you do want that clinical input, again, you can establish that, like, the site staff should be able to have that sort of dialogue with you, and have you in a position where you feel comfortable taking part in the study. Okay, so this younger group of people, they are, you know, they're not symptomatic, they're almost certainly working, they may have children, you know, that they're looking after, or even looking after their parents. And it can feel like a lot to commit to a study that asks you to come in every year. So it is actually important for us to have participants who come in every year. The value of that data over time is incredible, and so we do ask people to come in every year. However, you know, we understand that people are living their lives and things happen, and, you know, if you get a letter through the post and it's like, your next appointment will be on so and so date, and you're like, I just can't do it at this time, then the site staff should have some wiggle room, and they can offer you some alternative dates. There is, like, flexibility within the study, and we would say that just take the study 1 year at a time, just see how you feel with it. The new Enroll-HD protocol that is in development is exploring ways of making things easier for participants. So by allowing the possibility of remote visits, telemedicine, in some circumstances. Okay, and finally, what about if you're concerned about how your data will be shared and if people will work out who you are? Well, participants are given a 9-digit number when they agree to participate in the study. It's called a HDID, and we use that as our kind of primary identifier for all participants. So no names or any directly identifying information is ever entered into the database. All your information is connected to a 9-digit number. When data is shared with researchers, it gets recoded. So we kind of clean it up a little bit to make it even harder for anybody to be identified. So, for example, things like date of birth, gets recoded, so it becomes age at that study visit. And even that 9-digit number, which we kind of use in the database to identify you, that gets changed to a different 9-digit number. There's an awful lot of measures in place to make sure that, you know, everyone's data is safe and secure. And finally, any researchers using our data or samples must sign a legally binding document to say that they're never going to try and work out the identity of a participant.
Just to say thank you very much for coming along, and thank you to everyone who's attended today.